Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tanoa Talk. I am the Kava, and as always, it's good to be with you. So I would be remiss if I did not have a early episode of this podcast where I talked a little bit about the origins of my relationship with Kava and the kind of long back and forth that happened over the past 25 years or so, in which I went from being a novice consumer of mostly kava extract based products like yogi tea, kava stress relief, to being kind of a full blown kava guy who would buy bags of kava online. Um, I was recently going through some old documents that I started working on many years ago, and one of them was a kind of memoir of kava, and I had written some different chapters and like started it a few different ways. One of the ways was to kind of do like a historical fiction approach where I would be writing about kava domestication in Vanuatu from Piper Witchmani, which came over from Papua New Guinea. Um, and it was it was good. Like I read through some of it, and I was like, yeah, there's some kernels of some germs of a good book there, but it was just hard to kind of keep with it. And then I found some other opening chapters where I kind of dove right into my experience with kava, and some of it really jumped out to me and resonated with me. A lot of this stuff I started writing 10 years ago, but I thought that before I continue on with this Papua New Guinea series that I'm working on for this podcast, that I would do an episode where I talked about my um, discovery of kava, or kava's discovery of me, I should say. Um, and I think this is interesting for a number of reasons. One, um, it's it's very stereotypical for how people come to kava in the United States. Usually, that is by accident, or hearing about it, or having stress and knowing that something out there like kava exists, and then giving it a shot. Um, the second reason why this is important is because American kava culture is so disrespected. We have developed this really beautiful culture here in the United States over the past 20 years or so. Starting in Florida, mostly with the kava bars like the Knock, in 2007 or 2008 when it opened, and now up to 500 kava bars in the country. And it's very, very disrespected because you have this group of people that I like to call the grass mat mafia, who are who are basically these guys in New Zealand, mostly white men in New Zealand, who attack people like myself and others in the United States for the cultural appropriation of kava. And most of these guys, they're academics. They're kind of high minded, got their head in the clouds, and I really respect research and academia. I come from academia myself. I have my master's degree in anthropology and had offers to continue studying and getting a PhD, but decided that I wanted to do something else with my life. But so this is, not to say that I have anything in particular against academics, but these guys have been just jousting and throwing spears at us for years about cultural appropriation, when really they're the ones who could be accused of cultural appropriation, because they've really built their entire academic careers around publishing things on kava and conducting kava ceremonies in broken Fijian and things like that. So um, this is really a rebuttal to all of these attacks on American kava culture and drinking kava in America. I think this is a beautiful subculture that's emerged over the last 20 years, and it needs to be respected. It needs to be defended. And that is one of the primary reasons why I wanted to go over my origin story with kava and kind of give you my take on how kava evolved following that period. And I'm not going to do all of that in one episode, but I'm going to start with the origins in this episode. And I really think that you'll get a kick out of it, especially if you've been following me over the past 20 years on the Kava YouTube channel and on the Kava blog, where I wrote a lot of stuff primarily in the first years. So, Bula to the Hula, I hope you enjoy this episode. I came across Kava the same way many others do, by searching for a healthy answer to the problem of stress. It was the second half of my first year in junior college, and I had just stumbled upon the infamous academic road not taken that is the discipline of anthropology. It was a marriage between discipline and heart, not between discipline and mind. There were signs and declarations everywhere that this was a terrible decision. You'll never get a job. That is a useless liberal arts degree that will get you nowhere. Look at all of your friends going into business and making money. I was working full-time and going to school beyond full-time, trying to knock out all of my prerequisites and build up the basic foundations of my knowledge in anthropology. I wasn't getting enough sleep, and on the weekends would throw back beers with my friends and take on the night with a vengeance. But ultimately, this strategy found me strung out and wild-eyed. I would blast through classes fueled by coffee and cigarettes. I would devour horrible, greasy caricatures of food to get me through the day and to pump some dopamine through my weary brain. Bad habits started popping up everywhere. Food, coffee, beer, cigarettes, and a joint here and there to dumb down the stress. But there is a limit to how much excessiveness you can throw at your stress, even when you are 20 years old. I remember driving my car down the freeway on the morning of some random weekday in October. I was on my way to school and was creeping through traffic jams. Suddenly, I became overwhelmed with my surroundings. The clacking engines, the blaring radios surrounding me, the stifling heat, the music on my radio sounding like dismal cacophony. I felt like my mental stability was literally falling apart. I suddenly felt crushed, overwhelmed, and utterly helpless in this swamp of metal and heat. I gripped onto my steering wheel and became washed over with negative, shivering thoughts. I was having an anxiety attack. Now, one has some choices in a situation like this. One can do the advisable thing and go see a doctor. I did that. I remember the 40-something-year-old man behind the desk talking down to me on his awkward plastic textured sofa. You have a lot of bottled up stuff from your childhood surfacing. Let me prescribe some anti-anxiety medication to you. I looked at the chump in his big leather chair with his Pfizer-sponsored calendar hanging lopsidedly on the wall behind him and the Xanax-sponsored business card holder standing prominently at the front of his desk. I took the prescription note from him, thanked him, and walked out of the building. On the way out of the sliding opening doors, I crumpled the prescription up into a small ball and lobbed it into a trash can. Thankfully, my full-time job was as a cashier at a health food store in my hometown. It was a job that I truly loved and look back upon very fondly. It was a kind of place of peace for me, even though I worked full-time, sometimes having full-blown anxiety attacks on the job. It helped that it was in a comfort zone that was free of condescending management or conflicted ethics. And the heart of the store was a natural pharmacy. I felt very conflicted about it, but I wanted to take the risk and come out about my history with anxiety and see if there were any natural solutions. One of the women who worked at the pharmacy walked me over to the herbal section and pulled the bottle of valerian root off the shelf. She told me that if I took one of these at night, I would get restful sleep and wake up relaxed in the morning. She also advised me to brew chamomile tea throughout the day and sip it out of a travel mug. Thrilled, I bought all of these items and gave them a test drive. The results were subtle, but not nearly effective enough for me to feel like I had driven the wolves away from the door. I was still having crippling panic attacks. I even started dropping classes at school that had a presentation component. That is, getting up in front of the class and giving presentations. I had a horrible fear of this when I was younger. Like, I would agonize for days and days over presentations I would have to give in class. And then later when I was in university, I did a lot of, I guess, pretty good research and had to present it at conferences. And I used to really, really battle and struggle to get over that fear of presenting. And now it's, now that I'm 43 years old, it's a bit easier. But still, stressful. I had to find universities that didn't require public speaking classes for transfer students. My life was still being driven by anxiety, and I was determined to push it out of the driver's seat. I was committed to doing this without synthetic drugs and without the help of alcohol. Marijuana was not an option for me because I could only tolerate it when I was already several drinks deep. If I smoked a joint while I was sober, I would become incredibly nervous and paranoid. I always hated this stuff and only smoked it to fit in with the crowd I moved with. To this day, I don't go near the stuff. Additionally, it killed my energy levels, even when I wasn't high, and made me feel spaced out and uncreative. And then I found Kava. I was back at the natural pharmacy section of the health food store, rummaging through bottles of herbal capsules, when I came across a squarish tin can that had a tiki figure on the front. In big Pacific themed script, the words Kava King were laid out on the front of the can. I turned it over and read the details of the content. It was pure, fresh kava that was morphed into an instant beverage. The drink promised to help with my stress relief and sore muscles. It promised to fight anxiety without any side effects or next day hangovers. It required nothing but water, a cup, and a spoon, and it cost, oh dear, $20 for a quarter of a kilo. Oh, that's a good deal. I went back to the woman who had advised me to try valerian root and chamomile tea and asked her if the description on the can was accurate. She responded that it was very controversial and she didn't know if she felt comfortable recommending it. Why not? I asked. Well, there have been reports that it messes up your liver. And there you go. Within 5 minutes of me hearing about this stuff for the first time, the misinformation campaign against kava entered the discourse. Does it work? I responded. The short answer is a resolute yes, she responded. Again, I don't want to recommend it because there are conflicting reports on its safety. The FDA is even thinking of banning it. Well, I'm thinking of trying it. Go for it, she responded. Try it while you can. When I got home that night, I opened the can and sniffed the grayish-green contents inside. It smelled like a mixture of cement and pond water. I shrugged and dumped a tablespoon in a glass, vigorously stirring the contents until a thick, greenish sludge came to fruition. I quickly threw back the kava and stared out the kitchen window at the back at my black lab frolicking around in the moonlight. I kept watching the dog, thinking of how carefree and wonderful it must be to exist as a sentient being with a less complex mind and less complex problems. My mouth became overwhelmed with numbness, and I laughed a bit, wondering what the hell was going on. I walked over to my college textbooks and sat down to read up for an art history test I had the following day. I was making flashcards to memorize artists and their well-known works and the dates and general significance of their paintings and sculptures, I would imagine. I felt incredibly relaxed and focused. As the minutes passed, I started to recognize a feeling of pleasure and relaxation I had never known before. My mind was sharp, my curiosity was booming, but my spirit was calm and rested. My entire body was at ease, and I worked through the flashcards. I realized that about 45 minutes had passed, so I went to make another glass of kava. After repeating this cycle about 3 times, I came to realize 2 important things. The first was that kava was the solution to my problem with anxiety. In fact, it is a great solution for some people who regularly experience stress or anxiety. 22 years later, now 25 years later, I still accept this as an indisputable fact. I have done extensive research on the side effects of kava and how it compares to pharmaceuticals. There is no argument here. Kava is safe and effective. You can wander around the world as a drugged-up zombie who depends on chemical solutions to natural problems. Or you can free yourself from such a lifestyle with a root from the South Pacific. I think the decision is obvious. The second thing I realized was that kava can be very, very, very expensive. This is no trifling matter. You are not going to get your health insurance company to fork over money for kilo after kilo of kava, even though they probably should. Still believe that. This stuff can set you back $200 a month if you use it on a semi-regular basis. I'd say at this point I'm probably spending more like $300 or $400 a month in 2025. Is that price tag worth tackling anxiety and reducing stress? Probably. I've spent thousands of dollars on kava, or tens of thousands. But how can I complain when it got me through college, when it held my hand and walked me through perilous times of my life, when it was there to immediately and effectively address a horrible mood or stressful situation, when it allowed me to have a deeper appreciation for art, when it boosted my creative abilities and helped me sculpt my master's degree, when I had to give presentations in front of 1,000 people and dipped into some honey lemon extract from Paradise Kava to get through comfortably without a hitch. 2 very important things. Agreed. I'm agreeing with myself, essentially. So that is a little section of a book I started to write some years ago, and I never got around to finishing it, obviously. But I have chunks of text here and there, and on future episodes, I'll read some of it. And a lot of the book later goes into the Kava community as it developed online over the following 20 years. I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I did start the Kava Sewer blog when I was in graduate school as a means of really documenting my experience with Kava as I started navigating the retail space online and trying to find out which powders, which medium grind Kavas, which instant Kavas, which fresh Kavas were really worth a damn. And there was just nothing online that you could go to besides the websites that sold the Kava to read about Kava and kind of get people's impressions. I mean, there was some stuff like on Arrowhead and like some of these like kind of trip report websites, but that wasn't really what I was going for. I was never like really drinking Kava to have these deep spiritual experiences. Although I can say that one of the great side effects I get from Kava is vivid lucid dreaming, and that has really kind of helped me work through some stuff. And also there are some spiritual benefits to drinking Kava with people in a circle, and talking and having good deep conversations and opening up about your issues and kind of talking through your problems, and it brings down the guard a little bit and helps you express yourself. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this episode. It's a bit of a short episode, but before we jumped back into the Papua New Guinea stuff, I really wanted to take some time to talk about how I got into Kava and really set the table for future podcasts, because it is important to understand where somebody's coming from when you're listening to a podcast where they're rambling on about a very admittedly niche, obscure subject. So I'll write bula to the hula, a million bulas to a million hulas, and I'll catch you next time on the next episode of Tanoa Talk. Thanks.